When it's time to scale your business, it's time for Shopify. Get everything you need to grow the way you want. Like, all the way. Stack more sales with the best converting checkout on the planet. Track your cha-chings from every channel, right in one spot. And turn real-time reporting into big-time opportunities. Take your business to a whole new level. Switch to Shopify. Start your free trial today.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. The MLB at Field of Dreams returns. Bryce Harper and the Philadelphia Phillies face Byron Buxton and the Minnesota Twins at the iconic Field of Dreams ballpark. The field is calling. Watch the MLB at Field of Dreams game live on Netflix Thursday, August 13th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific.
This is going to be a long talk, and this is going to be about the greatest military feats that are ever accomplished by single individuals. So I'm not going to be talking about like Leonidas and the 300, because that was 300 dudes. I'm talking about single individuals that did crazy stuff on the battlefield. Some of them are going to be from a long time ago. Some are going to be pretty recent. Ladies, I hope I don't lose you on this, talking about like ancient Rome and war and all this stuff. It's going to be interesting, I promise. And the first one is going to be about one of my favorite time periods.
Across the country, United Health Group is working with local partners to build healthier communities every day. That includes helping partners like the Good Acre provide 45,000 meals and lower A1C in the Twin Cities, and helping Hello Family doulas deliver 44% fewer underweight births in Spartanburg. Because building healthier communities starts by giving people access to the care and services they need to live healthier lives. Learn more at unitedhealthgroup.com/commitment.
When you think like an athlete, setbacks don't stop you. But mindset alone doesn't get you moving again. That's where Icy Hot steps in. Ice works fast. Heat makes it last. So when the rest of the world settles because of a setback, Icy Hot accelerates your comeback with fast-acting, powerful pain relief. Icy Hot, you're so back.
Ever. And it's the Romance of the Three Kingdoms period. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's the War of the Three Major Kingdoms of China back a long time ago. We're talking over 2,000 years ago. And this dude right here, his name was Zhang Fei. Okay, Zhang Fei was in the Shu army, and he was the sworn brother to Guan Yu and Liu Bei. These are two big famous, these all three are real famous Chinese generals, and there's tons of folklore and, pretty much myths written about these guys because their feats were so great. But we're going to talk about a real one that is historically documented from both sides of the story. So we know it's not fabricated or hugely embellished. So first of all, Zhang Fei was a giant of a man even in today's standards, but back then he would have been an absolute behemoth. We know from the Han Dynasty, because we can see their measurements on their armor that they would custom or massive make for all their troops, that the average soldier was between 5'5" and 5'7" in today's height. So not too far off of what the average person is today. Zhang Fei was reportedly a foot taller than that. So you're talking about a man in the mid 6 foot range, and that's based upon his armor measurements. He's in the mid 6 foot range, a foot taller than everybody else. And he was built like a bull. Like, this dude is huge. He was supposedly very loud, very boisterous, and he used an extra weighted spear. So even if you blocked his spear, like if he swung his spear at you, even if you blocked it, this thing was reportedly so heavy that it would just knock you flying or break your weapon. I mean, you would crush your shield. Like, there was really not much you could do about this but evade it. Good luck. The thing was almost 14 foot long. And this is where the myth comes in on this spear. Some people say it was just a regular spear. Some people say it was what was called the serpent spear. It had a jagged edge to it that was wavy. That way, in case he stabbed you, you couldn't go home and like stitch it up. You were going to bleed out because the incision was not a clean cut or a clean just straight in and out. It had like all these jags and like waviness to the end of it, which we know that they did that with a lot of historical weapons to prevent people from getting sewed up from them. They would cause a lot of excess bleeding. Anyhow, getting to what he did that was so amazing of a standalone feat. This dude held off 10,000 people on a bridge. Okay, so kind of like 300. There's 300 dudes in this narrow pass. Well, there was this narrow bridge. The Wei army, led by Cao Cao, these are real names, I promise you, was pursuing Zhang Fei's sworn brother, Liu Bei. Liu Bei was the general and the leader of the Shu army, and he had just had a newborn son. And they had tried to go to this little village. This was right outside of Changban, And this was like in, I think, 200 AD. He had just had a newborn child. Cao Cao figures out about it. He's going to try to go kill Liu Bei, going to go try to kill the new heir to, son. And the Shu army was very small in comparison to the Wei army anyhow. But here's the difference. The Wei army was fighting for control and power. The Shu army were mainly peasants that were fighting for freedom. So kind of like the United States when we fought against Great Britain. We were a much smaller army. We were poor. We were overwhelmed. We did not have the numbers, but we had a lot of heart, and we did not play by the rules. The Shu army did the same thing, and Zhang Fei was no different. He said, brother, you take your kid and you get out of here. You take the whole army with you. I'm staying right here at this bridge. And Liu Bei said, okay, I trust you. So Zhang Fei and his horse stood at this bridge, and this bridge is narrow. Like, imagine like a little wooden bridge over a river. It's narrow. And Zhang Fei stood at that bridge, and the 10,000 troops that were pursuing the Shu army got to the bridge, and he said, you all are going to kill me, I know. But who wants to be the first few to cross this bridge and fight me? Because I'm going to kill a few of you. So who wants to cross it? You're going to kill me, but who wants to be the sacrificial lambs before the other ones strike me down? Now, this army that came after him, this was their flaw, because you would think they could just shoot arrows at them. It was a fast-speed cavalry unit. They didn't have bows and arrows. They were in such a, like, when they found out about this pursuit, they didn't arm themselves properly. They just dropped, so all they had was like spears and stuff. A few soldiers reportedly threw spears and tried to get Zhang Fei, and Zhang Fei said, okay, I'll remember your face. I'll make sure that it's you that I take out first. Well, then this terrified everybody. No one else wanted to throw a spear because the bridge was too long. They couldn't really reach him. And he said, if you get on this bridge, it's a one-on-one fight now. This is a narrow bridge. You got to fight me one-on-one. I'm going to stab you. And he did this standoff for a long time. And it gave his brother enough time to get to the boats and flee and get out of there, right? Well, eventually, Zhang Fei's like, I guess if no one's going to cross this bridge, then... And he just starts cutting the ropes. He starts breaking the bridge. And that's exactly what he does. He breaks the bridge. These guys had to go way... Like, it took them like 3 days to go around. And by then, they were long gone. And the Shu army would later, regroup and get a huge, massive following on this. Side note, he saved that little boy, the newborn baby, from being kidnapped when he was about 3 years old. That's a whole different story. But can you imagine a man that's that brave, that strong, that big, that 10,000 dudes are like, I ain't going over there. I ain't going. And like even Zhang Fei, he was okay with dying. He's like, I know one of y'all is going to kill me. Who wants to be first? You know, to me, that is just so crazy because combat today doesn't take very much skill. Anybody can learn to fire a weapon pretty quick. Anybody can, blow up a bomb. Like, back then you had to fight face to face, several feet away from each other. And like, it was very personal. Like stabbing and slashing is very, very personal. You're going to see and hear the noises of your enemy as you're fighting. You're going to feel each other's breaths. Like you're going to, like a lot of times in these sword fights and spear fights, it would actually come to physical grappling because once you get so close, you actually are too close to swing your sword anymore, and they would have to grab each other. That's why you always see samurais with one long sword and one little dagger one. The dagger one is when they got too close, they would pull the dagger one out because you would have to fight like that because you're literally too close to rear back and swing because you've got guys to your left and right in front of you and everything else. It was very personal. It was not like today. It took way more guts to go into that kind of a fight. Oh, and side note on that story, one of the officers tried to like stand up in front of his troops and look brave and was the first person to cross this bridge before no one else wanted to cross. And Zhang Fei didn't even use his spear. He literally grabbed the man's arm. He was swinging his sword. He grabbed the man's arm and stopped him from swinging his sword and then punched him in the stomach through a thin plate of armor, and it busted his gallbladder, killing him nearly instantly. And then Zhang Fei threw him off the bridge. I wouldn't want to cross the bridge either. I would have believed him. I'd have taken his word for it that I ain't crossing the bridge. I'll stay over here. I'll just kind of keep fading into the background of the 10,000 troops. Now, this next story is actually from the same war and the same army. This guy's name was Zhu Leiligan, and I'm sure I butchered that. Zhu Leiligan. Anyhow, this dude, okay, he's often depicted with this like massive fan, but there's no reports of him actually ever having this fan. But in history, they like to show him looking like this. He's in a lot of popular video games and movies and TV shows about that time period. Anyhow, this is a weather boy. Have you ever seen that meme? It's like, well, wouldn't you like to know, weather boy? This guy studied the weather, and he used his weather predictions and knowledge to completely decimate a massive army. The same army again, Cao Cao's army of Wei. So what they did is there was this bay. It was called Chi, and essentially the Shu army is on the beach of this place, kind of like D-Day. Think about Normandy. They're on the beach, and the Wei army docks in the bay. And Zhou Liang's like, I know that the wind is going to get really bad later. And it did. The wind got really bad. So all the soldiers on this boat, because they're waiting to like for daybreak to essentially be able to go onto land and try to fight this army. So they're all like on the boats, and they're getting seasick because the water's just there's this massive storm coming in. The winds are out of control, and it's mainly the winds. And this was like a famous wind that came through the area every so many months or years or whatever. And he knew exactly, like, when they come in, this wind is coming. We've got this, and this is what we're going to do. So to prevent the ships from rocking so bad, they did something called block chaining, which is where they get these massive giant chains. They get the ships really close to each other, and they throw chains to each other's ship and boat, and it kind of locks them together, and it prevents them from rocking so bad. So all the troops could now not get seasick. Well, this was the flaw. With those massive winds and the winds being so powerful, the Shu army actually sent several little tiny boats that, you know, at nighttime you couldn't see. You got to think there's not lights like there is today. This is 2,000 years ago. And these boats, they had barrels and barrels and barrels of oil on these boats. So they pull up to the ships, and these ships are huge. You got to think, you know, they're sticking 20, 30 feet off the water. And these guys are like little rowboats. And they're just taking the oil, and they're throwing it up on the side of the boats, and no one can see them. It's dark. They're throwing the oil on the side of the boats. They're dumping the barrels of oil in the water. And then they're like, psh, and they light that on fire, and they jump off their boats and swim to shore. Well, now because the water's on fire, the boats are on fire, and they're all chained together, this wind is just whipping this fire. And within minutes, like hundreds of ships carrying thousands and thousands of soldiers are all on fire, because back then boats weren't metal, they were wood. And just now, because the oil's in the water's on fire. The soldiers can't even jump off the boats into the water because the water's on fire at this point. Even if they did jump into the water, where are they going to swim? To shore where the enemy is? And you can't jump in the water with all your armor and sword and everything. You'll drown, you'll sink. So some soldiers did manage to get to shore, and they were immediately taken prisoner. A lot of them burned to death in the fire. And a lot of them, because they had to come out of the hulls of the ship up on the deck to try to put the fire out, the archers on the beach were just shooting them while they're on top of the boats. Not to mention that the archers on the beach were also shooting fire arrows to make the oil light up more. So all of this was devised from one dude's knowledge of the weather and like knowing that this is essentially going to be the chain of events that were going to happen. Like, they were going to set the water on fire anyhow, but when the enemies chained the ships together, they were like, oh my God, they just made this 10 times easier. Because now they couldn't even drive away without unchaining the other ships. These chains are heavy. This was not a quick process. And with all the chaos going on, a lot of them didn't even realize that and tried to undo the sails. And the wind caught the sails and it pulled the ships, which then pulled the chain and ripped sides of ships off. It was just a crazy chain reaction of events. A massive, massive naval fleet was decimated within hours. Here's a more modern one. It's Alvin C. York. So Alvin C. York in World War I single-handedly killed 25 enemy soldiers and took 132 of them prisoner by himself. Can you imagine? Like, imagine a cop arresting 132 people at the same time, and all 132 of them being compliant because they were in fear for their life that this one dude could take them all out. That's what Alvin C. York did, and he got the Medal of Honor for this. Now, Alvin C. York was from Tennessee. I grew up in Tennessee, and I remember driving on the Alvin C. York Highway like all the time. And how he learned to do this skill that he did was from turkey hunting as a kid. So essentially what happened is the enemy troop is, like I said, over 150 troops. And they've got these machine gun bunkers. Alvin C. York is in a group of like 12 dudes. He breaks off from the group and goes up at this like side angle. And he gets up at this weird angle. And what he does is, like, this is a cold-hearted badass when you can think clearly and level-headed in the middle of a firefight where you were heavily outnumbered by superior weapons, and you still think this plan through and then are able to complete it without shaking or getting your nerves. He gets on the cliff, on the ridge, and what he does is he can see all the German soldiers in line in this bunker, like down this trench in this bunker. So he's like, if I shoot the ones in front, the ones in the back will see that guy get shot and they'll hide better, or they'll change positions and move. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shoot the guy in the very back, and then I'm going to, one by one, keep coming forward. Because these guys are in a firefight with soldiers over here. They're not turning around and looking behind them, right? So that's exactly what he does. He starts picking them off from the back to the front. And he takes out 25 dudes. He supposedly does not miss a single shot this whole time. And because, you know, you got to think, he doesn't have that many bullets. He's one dude. He can't carry a whole bucket of ammo around. So he's got to conserve his shots. So boom, boom, boom. And they were almost all headshots, you know, confirmed by the U.S. Army. They're almost all headshots. And he's just working his way up. Well, eventually somebody notices, and they're like, oh, God. And this guy's name was Paul Vollmer, and Paul Vollmer was the lieutenant of the German force, and he realizes we've lost a lot of dudes. We're dropping quick. We got to get out of here. We've got to do something. So Paul Vollmer actually sees Alvin C. York, and he's like, oh my gosh, that's him. But with all this chaos and the shooting, he can't really communicate that well. He uses all of his bullets trying to shoot Alvin C. York, and he misses he runs out of ammo trying to shoot Alvin, because Alvin's like bobbing and weaving. He's moving around. He's like, getting repositioned over and over. And this Paul Vollmer guy's just seeing more of his guys every, 30 seconds to a minute. Another one's dropping. And he's like, I'm going to be next. I've got to call this. We surrender. We quit. We're done, bro. And he did. He called off a surrender. And what he thought is he actually thought there was tons of snipers up on this ridgeline. He did not realize it was the same man he was shooting at every time, because Alvin kept moving. He thought it was a massive force. And Alvin C. York yells down, drop all your weapons, leave them in the trench, and come out. So these guys come out of the trench completely unarmed. And it's just Alvin by himself. He's like, yeah, your boys are mine now. One dude, over 150 troops, in a superior bunker, superior weapons, the machine gun turrets and all. He single-handedly saved all the rest of his guys, because they would have been overwhelmed. There's no way they could have fought this head on like the rest of the guys were trying to do. And they asked him, how did you do that? And he's like, I grew up turkey hunting with a 22 in Tennessee, which if you know anything about turkey hunting, if you use a 22, you have to hit them in the head, which is a very small target, and turkeys walk like this. Their head is constantly moving. So he got used to being in the rhythm of the moving target. And he said the way the soldiers work is they're in that same rhythm. They look down sight, they take a shot, they look back up, reload the rifle. They go down, reload the rifle. So he said their movement was the same as a turkey. So he was timing it, and he would just hit them on perfect timing. And he did not miss a shot. Nearly 25 headshots, 132 captured prisoners. Musashi Miyamoto is next, and he is possibly the most badass rogue samurai of all time, which is called a Ronin. So a Ronin is a samurai, like a wandering samurai that does not have an official lord that he serves, where a lot of samurais will say, like, hey, I work for this house, this clan, this lord. Ronin is like kind of like a mercenary, and Musashi Miyamoto really wasn't interested in all that. He liked to just go around and be a badass and mess stuff up. That's what he liked to do. He was possibly the first documented undefeated champion we ever have. Like how we keep like MMA and boxing stats. He went 60-0 in deathmatch duels. So we know he really didn't lose ever, because it was deathmatch duels. And he would, fight to the death with katanas and swords. There was a lot of reports that he used 2 swords and all this other stuff. And he wrote 2 major books. One was called The 5 Rings, and the other one's called Dokudan. Now, The 5 Rings is his more popular one, and it's about strategy and technique and all this stuff, deception on the battlefield. He essentially had this master plan that was against everything else that everybody else did. If you guys know a lot about samurais and their rules and their laws, everything's very honor-bound, and it's called Bushido, and this is the way you fight, and this is the way... And Musashi Miyamoto was like, nah, man, like...
I wrote a little song to remind you, Choice Hotels get you more of the experiences you value. The Cambria Hotel's got it all. A rooftop bar, have a ball. Cocktails up here feel just right. Is Cambria amazing? All right. Bring a date, your teen, or even your mom. Book direct at choicehotels.com. See you on the roof.
Amazon Health AI presents Painful Thoughts.
Why did I search the internet for answers to my cold sore problem? Now I'm stuck down a rabbit hole filled with images of alarmingly graphic sores in various stages of ooze. I can clear my search history, but I can never unsee that.
Don't go down the rabbit hole. Amazon Health AI gets you the right care, fast. Healthcare just got less painful.
This is life and death, and this is my life. Last time I checked, it's not yours. I'm the one fighting this battle. I'm going to fight the way I want to fight. And he fought dirty. A lot of people know about Musashi Miyamoto and just think that he was just the best swordsman ever. And while he was a master-class swordsman, no one's denying that, he was also a master of psychological and mental warfare. So here's some things he would do. He sometimes, like, this is all reported stuff from his matches and his duels. Because these duels weren't just like he saw somebody in the side alley and he's like, hey, you want to fight? Like, these were against true samurai, true lords, true masters of the craft. It was a ceremony. People would show up like it was a thing. Like they had to do like different permits and all this stuff, because if a samurai gets killed, that affects their lord's power. But once you're also challenged to a duel, it's dishonorable to turn it down. So there was a lot of times that Musashi would duel, and it was a very big event. So these things were pretty well documented. Musashi would time his duels at like sunrise or sunset, and he would figure out where the sun was going to be at. He would go visit the site they're going to duel, and he'd be like, okay, the sun's going to set right over this, so I'm going to set myself right in front of this. So the sun would now be behind him, so the rival samurai would be like squinting, having to see him. It was like just little trickery things like that. He would go to places, and if the ground was sandy, he'd pick up sand and throw it in their eyes. Like, there was just so many things that he would do, even down to the way he had custom-made swords, which would be like in baseball, having like a custom-made baseball bat that allows you to hit the ball harder. So if you guys didn't know it, most katanas, almost all katanas actually, were a set custom standard to make, because they were massively made for military use. So blacksmiths were trained and learned, make katanas this length, this weight, this width, da-da-da. So trained samurais were so used at practicing against their opponents and their own blades at being like, okay, I know this is how long the blade is, so he can reach me from this angle. And when I go to block it, this is how much force I need to block with. Musashi Miyamoto would sometimes weight his swords, so that his swords were quite literally heavier, and he would also make them weird lengths. So sometimes he would have a shorter one and a longer one, and he most famously would dual wield one longer blade and one shorter blade. Now, how this applies in real life is if you're a samurai and you go to block, with your sword, but the blade is 2 inches shorter than a normal blade, so when you go to block it, you misjudge it, and now you don't block it at all, you miss the blade, and now it slices your arm or your chest or your face. That's the kind of stuff it would do to throw people off. And a lot of people go, will that really work? Like, wouldn't it be situational awareness? And the answer is no. I used to box. If you guys didn't know, that's why my nose is crooked. I've had my nose broke 7 times. I didn't say I was a great boxer, but I used to box competitively. I boxed for a long time, and I was pretty good at it, okay? And one thing that all boxers will tell you is they would rather fight like a trained opponent than an untrained opponent that's just a naturally good fighter. Because those naturally good fighters that aren't trained, you don't know what they're going to do in a street fight. They might throw a headbutt, they might throw a kick at you, you don't know. A trained boxer, guess what they're going to do? They're going to throw punches, and they're going to move in a certain way, and they're going to have a certain way about going about this fight. An untrained good fighter might bite you. I don't know. You don't know what they're going to do. Same thing with trained boxers fighting other trained boxers that happen to be southpaw. It just throws the whole thing up. A lot of boxers will not accept fights with southpaws because they get accidentally headbutted, they get toe-stepped. It's a big deal. And when you do it for years and years and years every day, you get muscle memory on some very minute details. So when this guy hits you with a sword that weighs a little bit more, and you didn't block hard enough because you weren't expecting the sword to come at you with so much force, it's going to kick you back. Or it's going to knock your sword down. In some cases, it might even crack or chip your sword because you didn't block it properly. So many weird little cheat things that he would do. He would show up in rags. Everybody would show up in these like nice formal like attire and these ceremonial clothes, and he would show up he would literally put stains to make it look like he had pissed himself or puked on himself, and he would show up with unkempt hair covered in dirt, and they would get mad that he was disrespecting the ceremony, and they would rush in, and he's already calculated this, and he would take advantage of their rush-in mistakes. Or they would under-evaluate his appearance and go, oh my gosh, this guy's an idiot, he doesn't know what he's doing, he's a peasant. And then they would get demolished by this dude. His first documented duel to the death, he was only 13 years old, and he killed a grown man that was a legitimate samurai. They think that his last duel was when he was about 29 years old, and he had already killed about 60 people at this point. So in 16 years, you're talking about 4 or 5 death duels a year. That's insane. I hope I did not do my math really wrong just then. And the only reason why he stopped killing people is he still accepted these duels, but he would just dishonor them by bringing a wooden sword to the duel and whooping them with a wooden sword. His biggest rival of all time that trained specifically to fight him, he actually carved a wooden boat paddle on the way to the duel, showed up late, unkempt, with a wooden paddle and no sword, and whooped his ass with a wooden boat paddle and refused to kill him. He's like, nah, you're not good enough to kill. And like he said in his own words, he valued life as he got older, but he still wanted to make it like look nonchalant. Like apparently he did not like the hierarchy of things and wanted to show people how foolish it was. Because after a while he learned, like, I don't have to kill them, I just have to beat them. There's no difference to me. It doesn't matter. Like, I don't want to take their life. And I thought that was a pretty cool thing that he did there. But the dude was like just a absolute master of a one-on-one fight. The last one of the day is Hideyoshi Toyotomi. And if you guys have recognized this name, he's very famous in Japan. I went to Osaka Castle and got to see like his home castle, and his like really cool ornate helmet that he's famous for, of wearing like the sun god helmet. It's really cool. He was also known as the Fool of Owari, or the Monkey King, because apparently in real life he had a big smile and he had very lanky limbs, and where he was not born a noble, he did not carry himself all like stout and proper all the time. He would bounce around. He was very talkative, and he was very acrobatic and very nimble in his movements. And he just kind of sprang around with a happy bounce to his step. So he got called the Fool of Owari, or the Monkey King. And he was anything but a fool. That was like kind of calling like a big guy tiny. He was a genius, and that's why he's in this story. So he started off, and this is truly inspirational. He started off being the sandal bearer to a very famous guy named Nobunaga Oda, one of the most famous figures in Japanese history. And if you guys know anything about like the hierarchy of feudal Japan, you knew your place. Like, it was very much a class system. And this guy is a peasant. He's a sandal boy. His only job is to keep Nobunaga's sandals warm, because it was cold there a lot, and they were up high in the mountains. So that was his only job: keep the sandals warm by putting them under his armpits or next to his chest while he walked around all day. And when Nobunaga wanted to change shoes, he would change his shoes. He would also change his clothes and shine his armor and do all that stuff too, sharpen his blade. But he was just his attendant, essentially, a peasant boy. There was a castle wall that broke during the middle of a war, and all of Nobunaga's lords and engineers were like, it's going to take us 20 days to build this castle. It's going to cost X amount of money, da-da-da. And the sandal boy was a genius, and no one knew this. And he's going, I can fix it like in 3 days, and I can save a ton of money, and it will be like perfect. And Nobunaga was like, you spoke out of turn, and you made them look foolish. They want to kill you, but I'll give you a chance. If you can complete that in 3 days, 1, I'll let you live, but 2, I'll give you a massive bonus. And you can actually be like a lord around here. Like, you can have some clout. You're not going to be a lord yet, but he gave him some power. And Hideyoshi said, yeah, deal. And he finishes it in 2 days. And it's perfect, and it cost a fraction of the cost. And, they couldn't spare to wait that 20 days because they're in a war. They can't just have a wall down for 20 days. So 2 days later, the wall's fixed. Everything's golden. And Nobunaga goes, wow, yeah, I'm going to give you a shot. And Hideyoshi, I'm getting to the feat that he does that makes him on this list because it was phenomenal. But Hideyoshi just time and time again proves himself that he is smart. He's a genius. He can think quick on his feet. In the middle of a battlefield, he can somehow, it's almost like he can see from the top down. Like, he can just read the battlefield perfect, and he can make on-the-fly decisions on changing troop formations. He had a near photographic, memory. Like, he would see troops and remember exactly who they were, down to like the smallest troop, because he remembered what it was like to be a peasant. So he took everybody as they were nobles. Like, he didn't treat anybody like they were lower than him or dirt, because he was what he considered, lower than them. And because of this behavior, he built like a cult following in Nobunaga's army, to the point where it kind of got worrisome, because Nobunaga was like, this guy might take my power away, because people love this man. Like, he's one of them. They'll die for him because they want to. They'll die for me because they have to, but they want to die for him. They want to serve him. So it kind of became dangerous, but Nobunaga ended up getting assassinated by one of his own generals who betrayed him. And Hideyoshi took his revenge, and he was the first person to ever unite Japan. And this was in 1590. He was the first person to end the Sengoku War, which was a war that lasted more than 100 years. And Hideyoshi brought that to an end by uniting Japan, and he would die 8 years after that. But on this way to uniting Japan, he came up with this genius plan. That's the reason why he's on this list. He did something called the Paper Castle. A nickname for this is also the One Night Castle, if you want to look it up. So Hideyoshi had this perfect idea of this massive force was coming for them, and he was severely outnumbered, like massively outnumbered, out-trooped, outgunned, massive armies coming this way. So there was a river dividing essentially the battlefield. So he said, hey, I got an idea. All my troops leave, right? Just leave a few of us in the fort. And what we're going to do is I need to buy a day. I need to keep them from advancing for a day. So what he did is he had like 3/4 of his troops left, and the other quarter of them stayed. And he goes, hey, the typical, platoon is about 5 to 10 guys in a squad. And at nighttime, they'll light one fire per 5 to 10 guys. Please, everybody spread out, one man to each fire, and it's going to make it look like we have tons of troops. So that, the time comes for that army to advance, and that night they go, oh shit, there's hundreds of fires, which means they probably have, there's 100 fires times 5 to 10 guys. They got 500 to 1,000 guys over there. Let's wait for the rest of our army to catch up. So let's slow down. Let's not advance so quick. Let's wait for our rest of our army to catch up. Well, the next day, what he had sent the other 3/4 of the guys to do was to build this like very flimsy fake castle in sections upriver. And I say very flimsy, but it's essentially walls of a castle, but they're not made out of stone. They're made out of paper, bamboo, and wood. So they're chopping bamboo, rolling out paper, and they're making these walls, and they're floating them down the river. Well, the troops that stayed are picking the pieces up in sections, and they're just fastening this thing together, all day and all night. And the next day, they have built the front of what at a distance looks like a massive castle overnight. And the enemy army goes, damn, they have to have the biggest army ever to put that castle up in one day. There has to be 10,000, 15,000 guys over there to put this up in one. This was not here yesterday, And they tell their commander, dude, there's a castle over there. And the commander's like, there's no castles here. And they're like, I don't know what to tell you. There's a castle there. So the commander comes out and, he's looking from one hilltop to another hilltop. They don't have like binoculars like we do today. Like the technology wasn't there, And he's going like, yeah, damn, that sure is a castle, and it sure as hell isn't on our maps, and it's never been reported before. They built a whole castle that fast. Nah, we ain't messing with that. We're going to go the long way around. We're going to retreat, and that's exactly what they did. And Hideyoshi actually saved that whole settlement in that whole area, and it bought enough time for the other forces to gather and get that big army to defend them off later. Who would have thought to make a fake castle and then have the engineering skills and the artistic know-how to put that together? You got to think, this is a man that's never gone to school a day in his life. He's never had a formal education. He's never had a teacher. He's never had a tutor. But he made this monumental accomplishment. How? What in his brain gave him the know-how to do that? You're talking about, imagine like, they made me go to school for like 22 years or something, and I don't know shit. How? How did he, it's not like people went around building architectural structures back then. Like, he was not a trained architect. He was not a trained engineer. But yet somehow he pulled this off flawlessly. And that fake castle was actually so good, they later turned it into a real castle because it had such a good foundation to it already. So not only did he do that in a day, it was pretty good. Like, how? Sadly, many people denied his rule, even though he did unify Japan, there was a lot of conflict around it. There was a lot of other struggles that happened. The Tokugawa would never, call him the true leader because he was not born of noble blood. They thought it was like an insult. But all of the people that worked for Hideyoshi were fiercely loyal to him and saw him, respected him, and for once, he was a man of the people that was truly from where they came from. And that was something that hadn't happened in Japan before. And it was a big, big deal in their culture, their history, and it's still celebrated today. When I went to Japan not too long ago, just literally like a month ago, there's monuments of him up there. They still have his castle up. The inside of it was really sad to see the inside had been essentially gutted out and made into like a tourist trap, but the outside of the castle is still there. And it's Osaka Castle. It's absolutely beautiful. Osaka Castle is not the paper made in one day castle. This is where Toyotomi lived in his home. And a little fun story about that is the room that he would have, like when people would come to see him to have talks, they were not this rich, but they used all the gold they had to make everything in this room gold. It was called the gold room. Everything, the chairs, the pillars, the ceiling was plated in gold, the walls, the floors, everything was gold. So when other armies would come to try to negotiate with Hideyoshi, they would immediately in their head go, oh God, we've got to offer way more than what we were offering before, or we've got to back down because this sumbitch has got this whole room made of gold. This dude has to have endless wealth. And in all actuality, they use all the gold in the vault to make this room for that psychological warfare. The man was just a genius on so many levels, it's not even funny. They would go in going okay, we're going to offer him 100,000 gold or, whatever their equivalent was, for a peace treaty. Then they go in and see this room. They're like, man, 100,000 gold ain't nothing to this dude. We better make it 300,000 gold. It was like psychological warfare stuff like that. It's just crazy. Or they would think that they could buy Hideyoshi off, they would come in and want to buy him off to make a law or to pass some kind of thing. They'd go in there and they're like, oh shoot. So before the conversations would even start, they're already second guessing their choices. We can't buy this guy off. He's got too much money to buy off. Just a super genius man, and who seemed when you hear him described by the people in history, truly seemed like a great man. Okay, I'm very sorry for my last statement if you're Korean. I did not know that in the last few years of Hideyoshi's life, he essentially went senile and invaded Korea and tried to genocide their whole people.
Hello? Look what TJ Maxx dragged in.
The Devil Wears Prada 2 is now streaming on Disney Plus and Hulu.
We are digital, we are downloadable, we are streamable.
The fashion event of the year is certified fresh.
Pull yourself together, we have work to do.
Critics say it's smart and witty and the perfect sequel.
That's all.
Get runway ready for The Devil Wears Prada 2 on Disney Plus and Hulu. Rated PG-13.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. See terms.
I don't know. I don't know what. Sorry for what I just said. That was crazy. It got worse. It got way worse. After the troops would kill the Koreans, he would make them, to prove it, send back their noses and ears, and he built giant mounds of them in Kyoto called the Ear Mound. And things are getting dark real quick for Hideyoshi. Really makes you reevaluate things. If you like that video, except for the end part there, you can follow our podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcast. It's called Matt from Nomads. Our Facebook and TikTok is called Nomads Animal Encounter. Our YouTube and our Instagram is called Nomads Animal Reserve. I'm sorry for that last dark bomb I just dropped on everybody. I gotta go sit down for a minute.